All right. Welcome, DoorGrow hackers, to the DoorGrow show. If you are a property management entrepreneur that wants to add doors, make a difference, increase revenue, help others, impact lives, and you are interested in growing your business and in life, and you are open to doing things a bit differently, then you are a DoorGrow hacker. DoorGrow hackers love the opportunities, daily variety, unique challenges, and freedom that property management brings. Many in real estate think you're crazy for doing it. You think they're crazy for not, because you realize that property management is the ultimate high trust gateway to real estate deals, relationships, and residual income. At DoorGrow, we are on a mission to transform property management businesses and their owners. We want to transform the industry, eliminate the BS, build awareness, change perception, expand the market, and help the best property management entrepreneurs win. I'm your host, property management growth expert, Jason Hull, and the founder and CEO of DoorGrow. Now let's get into the show. And today's episode, I am hanging out with a bubbly, fantastic, wonderful lady named Jennifer Stoops. Jennifer,
Hi,
welcome to the
Jason.
show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So we're going to be talking about today bridging the gap. And I'm sure we're going to go off on some tangents here because that's just how you and I talk. But
That's
we're
true.
going to be talking about bridging the gap between inside and outside sales. And Jennifer is part of a company called Park Avenue Properties. And those watching this instead of listening can see this big sign behind her.
Sure.
So Jennifer, tell everybody a bit about who Jennifer is and give us a little bit of backstory on you.
Okay. So interestingly enough, when I moved to North Carolina in early 2007, I interviewed with John Bradford. I'd just gotten my real estate license here in North Carolina and interviewed with John in March of 2007. And it is the only job I have had since I lived in North Carolina.
Wow.
I actually graduated with a 4-year degree. I'm from Buffalo, New York. I graduated with a 4-year degree, and I went to work at a dental practice, of all things. Had no idea that I even remotely wanted to get into the dental field, but she was looking for a business manager. And my degree was in business and communications. I put myself through school, so I couldn't go for my MBA right away. It was just too costly at the time. After working in this pediatric dental office for about 6 months, the dentist sat me down and she said, "Would you consider going back to school?" And I was like, "Well, sure, for what?" And she said, "We'd like for you to be a hygienist with us." And she said, "Your personality is better with the patients than doing the insurance stuff." And I said, "Sure."
Right.
So I am a retired dental hygienist turned property manager. It's a long story short. But I'd always had an interest in real estate, but coming from Buffalo, New York, it was not a terribly lucrative field there. Nobody was moving to Buffalo. They were all moving out. And I ended up doing the same. So I started here as the first property manager and been here almost 12 years and just worked my way up.
Yeah. So when you started there, how many doors did the company manage?
At that time, probably 30-ish.
Yeah.
John and his aunt were working at the company at the time. And she kind of did the books. She was also licensed. John had actually gotten his real estate license on the side. He was a sales executive at IBM. And so the 30-ish properties we were managing were a combination of his and business colleagues, IBM, and he came from IBM and ExxonMobil background. So it was a combination of those folks, and we've just grown from there.
And so where are you guys at now? Give people a little bit of perspective.
So we are currently at just about 1,400 doors.
Yeah. So you guys are one of the rare ones that have broken that 1,000-door sort of threshold. And that's a pretty large outfit that you guys have got going on. And my understanding is John basically lets you run this thing now.
Yes, that is true. It's probably been about 4 years actually since he's been as he says, at the wheel. So it's been about that long.
All right, great. So, and one of the challenges that you've seen over the years is this difference between outside and inside sales. So maybe you could explain to those listening that may not be clear on what your definition is of those two things, but what are those and what sort of challenge exists there?
Sure. So I think in property management, outside and inside sales, I think everybody at least has, whether it's your property manager or otherwise, in our organization, I'll just talk about ours. We have our outside sales would be business development folks, those that are calling on owners, potentially visiting the properties. And inside sales are our property managers, really. That's the inside counterpart. Previously, before we had grown to where we are today, I would have been considered outside sales as a property manager. But we had some support team that would help be sort of inside sales. But in our world today, it's our business development folks and then our property managers internally.
Got it. And so what is the challenge that you've noticed? Because this is a challenge I think every business has experienced, the difference between what the salesperson is saying and what ends up actually happening.
Yeah.
And this is a constant struggle, I think, in any business to
I
make
agree.
sure that the sales team is correctly relaying what is actually going to be done and the team actually fulfilling accurately on what the salesperson is selling.
Absolutely. I think I kind of look at it like there's 3 C's. There's collaboration, contribution, and communication. Of course, communication being the key to everything. But honestly, we've recognized you have to have all 3 of those to make it work right. We had even fallen into the trap, and it really hasn't been that long that we've been in a mode where we've sort of reined this in a little bit better. Internal complaint is always the same. I cannot get the rent rate that business development promised. I can't honor the contract the way business development wrote it. I didn't know they agreed to these terms, and so now it's a special circumstance. Now I have to try to go manage. I now have to relay to the owner that they have to do these things to make the property rent ready. And that would frustrate the internal team. The external team was, go close the deal, get the contract signed, turn it over to the internal team and move on. And there was no further engagement between the two. There was not a lot of collaboration. There was not a lot of communication leading up to the execution of the contract, the terms, the rental rate. And so we decided we had to change that. And that has helped tremendously. We look at it like they're complementary roles now. So business development outside has a counterpart inside, which is really your property manager. Because, excuse me, when our business development team is signing on a new property, they are assigning it to a property manager internally. You're talking to that homeowner for the first time. And so, if somebody is, a little bit more just very, very business, you could probably turn them over to somebody internally that has a very similar personality. So we have multiple property managers here. You may have somebody that's a brand new investor and needs a little bit more hand holding. So you might want to put them in touch with one of the more, deliberate or hand holding or soft spoken individuals internally. So the BD person can read that, but you have to get to know your internal team. And that doesn't necessarily mean being in the office, because a lot of firms, including ours, a lot of firms today that have grown, you've got maybe one main office and business development people in various markets. But you have Zoom and you have, we're doing that right now. So you can get to know somebody and learn about them and really feel connected to them as a teammate, utilizing things like technology and stuff like that as well.
Yeah. So, so what are things that you do as a company then to really make sure that the communication is there, that the collaboration is there, that contribution is focused on? I mean, I guess at the foundation, it would start with the right team members.
Mm-hmm.
And so what are some mechanisms that you put in place? How do you identify whether somebody's going to really be a good fit on the property management side or on the outside sales or BDM side?
A lot of it has to do with personality. And really, you can ask folks too. I mean, there's a lot of folks that'll tell you up front, I have no business being a forefront in sales. I prefer to be in the background. Salespeople are historically not ultra organized, and they tend to be very chatty, very social, and folks that are more on the organized side tend to not want to be in sales roles. They feel that it can be very disorganized and they don't enjoy that. And we've kind of learned that with folks around here. And when we have team members, oftentimes too, when you're trying to figure out their appropriate roles, because you can determine good people when you interview them. Every once in a while, we just said the other day too, we should do this more at the interview process, but we do tend to do it afterwards. We've done some of the shortened versions, but we've done like the personality profile test, things like that, to just sort of get a gauge. More often than not, people are usually honest about it. They'll tell you up front. But you're right. It is very important to have the right people on the right team.
Yeah. So I use a lot of assessments because I'm a nerd when I'm hiring, because I don't want to just go off of my gut. I want something that I can look at that helps me make things really
Probably
clear. And
much smarter to do it that way. A lot less hard.
But I love the idea of just simply asking people, because and one of my favorite things to ask when interviewing candidates to work at DoorGrow is to simply ask them what they most love doing and what really drains them. And in order to get a real honest answer out of them, because a lot of people are listening are probably thinking, well, nobody's going to be honest. They're just going to say whatever the job is. So the way that I usually phrase it is I'll just say, like, I'll be honest and disclose first, like what makes me uncomfortable, what I'm not good at, what drains me, and the stuff that makes me feel alive and that I love doing. And so I'll just transparently share that. And then I'll say, the reasons, all these things that I dislike, that's why, all these different people on my team have a job. That's why they're there, as I need them for those things to support me. And so then I'll ask them, what drains you? And I usually preface it by just saying, there's lots of different things that we do in this company, which is always true. There's so many different things you could be doing. And I know that if I have you do the things you love most, that you are naturally going to do a great job at it, because that is just what you're inclined to do. I'll never have to motivate you to do it. I won't have to follow up and make sure you're doing it. You're just going to do it because you love doing that. So I want to make sure I get really clear on what you love, because I want this job to be something you love. So tell me what you love and what drains you. And I usually get a pretty honest answer. I get most of the time they're really honest. I'm surprised how honest they are once I kind of preface all of that at the things they'll tell me that drain them, that they don't like. And sometimes it's stuff that's in the job description.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, this is maybe not a good fit for that person, or so.
One of the things that I do, like you're trying to get honest answers, is I'll ask, what do you like to do in your spare time? That can tell you a lot about a person and it's sort of an ending question to the interview, because to your point, you're usually told what you want to hear as it pertains to the job description and whatnot. And exactly, you don't want people to take a role that they will not enjoy at the end of the day. It's hard to describe every single thing, in any of our roles. And property management, my gosh, there's so many moving parts. But you learn very quickly when you ask somebody, what do you enjoy doing in your spare time? You learn a lot about, okay, if somebody says, I enjoy quiet time, I enjoy, reading, I enjoy, time by myself. Okay, that's probably not going to be your salesperson.
Probably inside.
Right.
Yeah.
And those that are like, listen, I belong to a charity organization, and I'm on a kickball league, and I volunteer at this, and I sing in a choir, and whatever that you're like, okay, well, that's probably more on your outside team.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. No, I like that. So that's clever. So asking what they do in their spare time. I think also when you ask, just about their daily life and what they do in their spare time, they also reveal some of their propensities towards either organization or towards, maybe, things that are more driven activities, which might be more outside sales, if they're more driven towards activities. And so, so I think that's clever. So what are some big red flags if somebody's just a really bad fit for outside sales, or might not be good at communication, contribution, or collaboration?
So for outside sales, it is the folks that are, I prefer to work by myself. I prefer to work independently. I don't like to talk on the phone. They get nervous with having to speak to customers. And there's certain little things that'll come out where you'll learn that. Because, business development in any organization is a lot of not only talking to the customer, but branding whatever company it is. So it may be you and I were both just at a conference. You're out there, I'm there branding Park Avenue, as an attendee, but still, representing the brand as you are for yours. And so when people are not, necessarily wanting to be in a social situation or things like that, that's going to be a problem. Those are red flags.
So what about red flags on the inside side? So if you're looking for a candidate for inside, that you want them to be a property manager, what are some things to say this person's not going to be able to handle this? They're not going to last in this role, because that can be a challenging role. I imagine dealing with all the maintenance stuff, dealing with upset tenants. It takes a fairly resilient person, I would imagine, to deal with that.
Yeah, it's conflict resolution. If people tell you, I don't enjoy conflict, I struggle with conflict, and that's a big one, because a property manager is conflict resolution all the time. And you don't mean for it to be, but you're a middleman between an owner and a tenant. And so you have to, or if they give you I know the hours are, 9 to 6, but if I left a little early on these days a week, or I've had folks say, is this job always in the office? Because I don't enjoy being in an office all day, every day. That's they're like, well, yeah, it kind of is. That may be a candidate for outside sales. But you still have conflict resolution even in outside sales, because that goes back to the collaboration, that we've learned. I think business development and outside sales didn't normally have to deal with that. Really, the conflict was coming from the disconnect between inside and outside. But business development folks or outside sales, they were kind of the hero. And the conflict resolution and all the other problem solving things were coming from the inside team. And then that was creating the disconnect between the two teams. And you don't meet that. We're all on the same side, and so we had to figure out how to go fix that.
Yeah, I've been in tech companies where you had the sales team and what they would sell, and then you'd have the fulfillment side would be like, they would hate the sales team. There was this animosity that was tangible inside the companies. I would see, in which they the billing department or the fulfillment department or whatever, they were like, oh, those sales guys, they're always selling stuff that they said it wrong, or they're not doing it right. And there's this frustration. And so how do you facilitate this bridge between the two to mitigate that? So once, say you've got the right people in place, how do you ensure that there's really a really good understanding on both sides of what their capabilities are and what's accurate?
Yeah, sure. We actually started to align the goals. Business development roles have a tendency to operate on bonus structure. Obviously it's sales, so it's bonus, it's targets, it's bonuses, it's goals. We've recognized that even though the folks internal are generally W-2 based, salary employees, there is a way to align that to where they win together, they lose together, a shoulder-to-shoulder approach. And so what we had done was, one, we created transparency. We aligned the goals. The goal for the entire organization is new business and retaining business. And so previously, we would run into issues where, business development would close a deal, turn it over, move on. Now, the way that we have it structured, they get a portion of their bonus structure at the execution of the agreement, but the balance of it doesn't happen until the property is rented for the first time. So it forces the two to stay engaged. The collaboration, we've created a clear path of collaboration between the two, as far as business development will make the call. They may negotiate some of the terms, but the contract, which wasn't done this way previously, the contract will actually be sent out now by the property manager. Not that we're trying to put more work on the property manager's plate. This DocuSign, it doesn't take that long, but it forces the two of them to talk about the terms that were agreed to with the homeowner. Prior to the contract even going out, the collaboration on the rental rate happens. And an inspection of the property happens, so that the two of them are looking at the inspection to come to terms with what the owner may need to do to the property to make it rent ready. Previously, all of those things were done by BD in advance. And once everything was executed and a rent rate was given, the BD person was not normally telling an owner what needed to be done to prep the property. And so now all of a sudden, property managers in the picture, they receive a new contract. Now they're looking at the terms going, this is not something I normally do. So now I have to go turn utilities on for this owner, or whatever the special circumstances are that they now have to go figure out how to manage. Oh gosh, I don't think we can get this rent rate. So we made it to where they win together, they lose together. So they're watching the same metrics now as it pertains to that. And
Yeah,
they both have a collaboration and a bonus structure tied to it.
Yeah, because one of the big challenges, if you get a closer on your team and they can close deals, and you put them in a position that it's simply about getting a deal on and not the longevity of that relationship with the client or the customer, they'll get deals, they'll close
One and
deals,
done. That's right.
and they'll move on to the next one. And those might not be a good fit for the business. They might not be a good fit for the team. And they're less inclined to make sure that what the message that they're sharing is accurate. And
That's right.
they're far less inclined to make sure that they have really good communication with the fulfillment side of the business to know what can be done and that sort of thing, because their financial reward isn't connected to that. So I love that. And I love basically what you're saying. It sounds like you've created a much more gradual transition from one department to another. So a lot of people view it as, here's sales, and then there's this clear cutoff.
Yes.
And then boom, you're with other people. And
right. And
you're
owners
off
don't like
plate.
that either. That's right. And the client didn't like that. And so, yes, it is a more gradual approach now, where there is a integration of the property manager pretty early on, because otherwise business development has established this great relationship in the beginning, promised the world, and in comes the property manager who's like, I'm sorry, your property's been on the market now for 30 days, but we're going to have to lower the rate. And that then sets the tone. And now business development's getting a phone call from said owner to go, wait a minute, you told me I could get this, and now this person that is managing my property is telling me we can't get that. And so it makes everybody go backwards. And so it's a much slower process for turning it over, so that so a homeowner doesn't feel like it was either a bait and switch, or that they're just kind of left at the altar when business development kind of moves on.
Yeah. So I imagine other property managers that are listening, or property management business owners listening to this, they could probably start to implement some of this even in their companies that are smaller, simply by getting the property manager involved earlier on with the person that's doing the sales. And a lot of times that's the business owner, but if they have managers, it might be wise for them to start transitioning as soon as possible to somebody else. And I think what that also does is it frees up the BDM. There's a lot of work that the property manager can help facilitate in building that relationship and in onboarding the client. And I think that helps the sales process. It helps transition them into just being a client and going through into that sort of delivery or fulfillment stage of business. And so, which is going to free up time for the BDM to spend more time selling, I would imagine.
Yes. And we've created transparency too. So we've used technology besides doing consistent, touch points. Right now, I had gotten back engaged in doing a lot of the BD. So I'm generally here with most of the team, but we meet regularly to talk about the CRM, because everybody can see, our customer care team takes a telephone call and puts the lead into the CRM. Everybody gets alerted, so they know on the rotation which property manager it's going to get assigned to. So the property manager knows there's something coming down the pipeline. They can see whether it's me or anybody else doing the business development side of it, where they are in the transaction. Has contact been made? Where are we in the process? Because once it gets to a certain point where the owner is ready for a contract, we will go ahead and then collaborate. Let's look at the rental comps together. What else do you have available in the neighborhood currently that we're managing? Are we competing against something else? So there's a collaboration, but we also have transparency, not only in the CRM and to know where we are with the leads, but you got to make it fun. I mean, this is a very thankless job. It's a very hard job. There's a lot of moving parts that everybody has to deal with every day. And so we have actually used technology that talks to our CRM, which is an internal one that we have, and then our property management software. And it's a tool called Clipfolio. But it's awesome because it makes graphs and things like that. So if we say, okay, the target for Team Liberty is 10 new doors this month, then every time something new comes in and they close it out in the CRM and they mark it a closed deal, their graph changes. So both internal and external can see where they are in their target to go get as it pertains to new doors and retention. Those are two metrics that the internal and external teams are both responsible for, is helping with retention. Everybody in the organization needs to help with retention and new growth. And so those two metrics in particular are a collaboration between the two teams.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important in a business to focus on the entire life cycle and the lifetime value and extending that rather than just on sales, just on closing deals. Because what ends up happening on companies that just focus on closing a deal on sales is that fulfillment in all of those companies tends to take a back seat and tends to start to suffer and struggle because the focus is just on getting revenue in. And if the goal needs to be on revenue as a whole in aggregate, lifetime value, building up the longevity of these contracts, keeping clients on, because the number one prospect that most businesses have is their existing customer.
That's exactly right.
We're always focused on getting new ones, which is exciting, but we want to make sure that we keep one, because there's no point in getting on a new deal if you lose one.
Right.
Then
and
there's no growth.
I think every property management firm across the country, for the most part, several that I've talked to over the last few months, everybody for the last, I know for us, last year was our biggest one, but for the last couple of years have experienced attrition due to sales. The sales market has come back. And so to your point, the internal customers that you already have, if somebody says, okay, hey, when my tenant moves out, I'd like to go ahead and sell the property. Well, why not try to retain that business and now send something out to all of your homeowners, letting them know, hey, we've got a property that another one of our clients is looking to sell. Is anybody interested in buying it? And I'm sort of talking about it at a 30,000 foot view, but that's something that we went ahead and implemented, where we're periodically, sending a letter out to all of our owners. It's an email format, but it's not just an email. It looks like it's a little letter that goes out. It's just letting them know, hey, if you want to buy more, the market's good for that. If you're interested in selling, let us know, because we have others that are interested in buying. And so that's still a door saved. It's still a sale all over again. And so that's something that's also very important. That's why retention is something that had to not only be tracked internally, and business development was a little bit surprised when we were saying, look, you have to help with retention too. But you do. And because internally they may need some help on trying to convince person X as to why this particular property is good, or the messaging has to be the same too about the firm. What is it we are selling? What is our firm good at? What sets us apart? We need to have an aligned message on that.
Yeah, the way in which I've found that for my own business and for the clients that I coach in sales, one of the number one things that impacts client and customer retention is just how they're sold in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And it changes how you sell if you're selling for the long term. It changes how you build and create that relationship. And if that relationship is built well in the beginning, the lifetime value and the chances that they're going to stay with you longer is far more likely than if you just get the win and close the deal and move on. And so it does. It changes how that happens. So have you found... So I have a couple of questions. One, what CRM do you guys use? Do you have a sales CRM, and then you have your customer, portal and back office that you're keeping track? Are those separate, or are you trying to do everything in one system?
No, well, we're probably going to move to one system. Today, we actually use something that we actually created internally, called, it's a software called KNACK. It's KNACK. Yeah. And we developed that to be our business development tool, but also it tracks a bunch of our other metrics and things. So we have multiple tabs in it. We actually have changed the name to it to, we call it Grand Central Station in our office here. And so it tracks our retention. It tracks, all of the metrics that our property management teams and our business development team, those that they have to watch together. And then, of course, internally with respect to maintenance and work orders, and even internally, they're still doing sales. It's a different kind of sales. Retention is sales. Keeping a homeowner happy is still sales. Tenant retention, it's sales. It's just a different kind than the initial close of the deal. So even internally, this system is tracking lease renewals. It's tracking tenant retention. It's tracking how quickly we're doing maintenance work orders, because there is a direct correlation to how quickly even normal regular maintenance gets handled and tenants staying longer in the property. Maintenance is the number one reason tenants leave. So we have a system that we've developed internally. Zoho actually is another tool that we use, but it works more with our emails right now. But interestingly enough, they have a ton of tools that can be used, and I think we may be moving in that direction. But today we use Knack, and then we use this Clipfolio, and Clipfolio is what actually creates the fun stuff. It creates the pie charts and the graphs, and so everybody can see.
It's more of a dashboard.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. It's our dashboards, and it shows everybody where we're at.
So you've got your own system for kind of keeping track of some of your metrics and tracking data. You've got this thing that will take the data and put it in pretty charts so the team can see kind of a scoreboard so they know whether they're winning or losing. And then you also have your back office, I would imagine, for accounting and keeping track of properties and all of that you're using.
That's right.
And all these. So, okay. So I wanted people to be clear that you weren't just doing all this in one magical unicorn system.
No.
It
takes a lot to put it all together.
Okay. So the other thing I wanted to point out is you had talked about kind of gamifying this for your team. And I think it's important for people listening to recognize that these two personality types that we're really describing here that both need each other and help each other, that can work together, have very different motivators. And I think as entrepreneurs, one of the big mistakes that we make a lot of times, and I was talking with clients this morning about this, is as entrepreneurs, a lot of times we're very money driven. We're very money motivated. Like that's a reward that we like to get. And so we mistakenly assume that everybody on our team are money motivated or economically or financially driven. And it usually is not the case. And most people are the opposite. But outside salespeople, BDMs, they are usually the good ones, are money motivated. They're economically driven. And so financial rewards and bonuses could work for them, but then you have this other side and they're not. And I find that when people are not economically or financially motivated, they are recognition motivated. They want to be recognized. They want to be seen winning. They want to feel like they've contributed. They want to feel like a winner. And that's a very different sort of situation. And so I think it's important as business owners to understand that if you're going to gamify this, to not just make it monetary rewards. I see it all the time. Somebody's like, we're going to start a reputation game in our company and we'll just give everybody a financial bonus. And then they're like, why didn't it work? Coordinators like getting so excited about getting more money? Yeah. Right. And so, but they do get excited about getting recognized and doing a good job and being called out in front of everybody as being awesome. That's right. So I think it's important to recognize that you don't always have to throw money at people to get them to do things. Sometimes
and it's interesting too, because on the internal team, so we do have some monetary bonus, both for external and internal. And to your point, that isn't 100% of what they're looking for. Definitely the sales folks, generally speaking, that is exactly what they're looking for. Internally, we have a few different ways that we do it. Just this year, we started in our Hall of Fame, and so it's our wall of stars. And so each month, somebody is selected. So, for example, in February, the person that stood out from the crowd in January was selected, and so their picture goes up on the wall, and it stays there because we have January through December up on the wall, and so once their picture gets put up there, the picture stays up there. And so that's something that we implemented this year, and that's exciting for them. We do, PTO time. It's amazing, recognizing somebody, and it doesn't cost your organization anything to say, you have a half a day, you've earned 4 hours of PTO time as a bonus. Or if you meet these metrics, for each metric that you meet, it's 1 hour of PTO time. It's unbelievable how far that goes. Nice. Little things, we do when we've had business development, come into the office, for those that can physically come in, we do what we call training trivia. And so we might be training on what our lease agreement says or our management agreement, or what our pitch is supposed to be like to our owners. What is our message about our firm? And I'm telling you, I go to the dollar store and buy these boxes of candy. And as people are getting it right, they're picking from this big bag. I can get $20, $30 worth of candy, and I've like 30 boxes of candy, and they're so excited. It's little
Yeah.
stuff like that. So even from a training perspective, we try to make it fun, because it can be a very grueling job. It's mentally taxing. You're a middleman between a tenant and an owner and their money, and that's not a really great place to be on any given day. If you go home and a tenant or an owner is not mad at you, that's a great day.
Right, right. So, yeah, sometimes it's herding cats and it's organized chaos
Absolutely, every day.
and lots of conflict resolution.
Yes.
Well, Jennifer, this has been really fun, chatting about all of this. And so I think there's lots of ideas that have been thrown around that are helpful. Um, any last thoughts on like making this work between your inside team and your outside sales department, and especially for the property management businesses that are not at 1,400 units and they're smaller and they're just getting started and they've got a really small team. What do you think are some of maybe the first things they should just start to try to tackle to make this work well?
I would ask people specifically, what do you think we should be saying to new clients? Ask. It's all about communication. Just ask, because even your internal folks, while they may not volunteer the information because in their mind they're like, well, I'm not in sales, but if you ask them, any of your staff, they will tell you. And that literally goes from, they all hear the stuff. That goes from your maintenance coordinator to the folks that are answering your phones to the owner of the company, whoever is doing business development. Just ask. They'll give you feedback. What are the most common things? Because what we do is problem solving. Property management is problem solving. What problem do homeowners have, or what are they concerned that they could have? Why are they hiring a property manager? All of the people on your team in some capacity are going to tell you what the most common things are that they hear are an issue from a tenant or from another homeowner. And that's what you need to go tackle as a team. That's what you need to make sure you know how to go solve together. But they'll tell you. It truly is just about asking them. And that's something, buy-in is huge. The buy-in on the message, the buy-in on how process should look, the collaboration on that. And even we didn't learn that right away either. We would say, okay, I think it should work this way. And well, you've only been here 2 months, so you probably don't have an opinion on it yet. But you know what? They do. And it's good to ask for those ideas and feedback on that. They won't give it to you unless you ask for it.
Yeah, it's true. Especially on the inside, type of personality types, I find a lot of times they see a lot.
Yes.
And they're almost like the guides for humanity. They're so aware and they see so many things that we miss, us highly driven, money motivated people and
Yes.
entrepreneurs that are crazy and wild and taking risks. They see so much. And I meet regularly with my fulfillment team just to ask them, like, what challenges are you dealing with? What are you noticing that is coming up as an issue? And a lot of times we can solve it just by changing how we sell and making sure that we qualify prospects better, that we change what type of clients we're bringing on, because I want them to have a good experience too. And what that does is when you align sales with your fulfillment side starts to feel like you care about them,
right?
That you and some
It's
of my
important
biggest
what they have to
mistakes
say.
were when I wasn't listening to the fulfillment side. I wasn't listening to that team and getting their feedback, and they were frustrated because then they feel like they're not supported. And why are you throwing this stuff at me and these people at me that we shouldn't
have
be
to go
working with?
manage the problems that you guys went and promised, but
Right.
nobody's asking us what we have to deal with on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. So our business is our best product.
Yes.
And when we look at our business as a product, we can see that there's flaws in every one of our businesses. There's always flaws in our product, and we can approach it as a product and figure out, how do we improve this? How do we make this better? How do we systemize this better? How do we reduce churn? How do we improve the communication? And so I love the idea of just asking, what should we be saying, or asking the fulfillment side of the team, like what things are coming up and what are the big questions that we're having. So
it's almost always the
systemize
simplest things that are overlooked.
Yeah. And really, sometimes it's the simplest things that give you the biggest bang for your buck, or the biggest increase in revenue. Sometimes it's really simple pivots that need to be made. And sometimes these really simple changes that they can see help improve the business. And so that's why even with tools and systems like we use, like Gather Kudos and stuff like that, getting feedback coming in from the business or feedback from any channel, I think a lot of times people perceive feedback as something negative, but I see
No,
feedback as this gateway to everything that you really want.
absolutely. And yet, even the stuff that comes in that's good, you can still be looking at to do better. But feedback is critical, because how do you fix what you don't know? And if you're not asking for it, you're not going to get it. And all of a sudden, you've got somebody that wants to terminate with you, or an employee that doesn't want to be here anymore, but nobody ever asked for feedback. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden it's laying in your lap, and you're like, gosh, I could have fixed that had I known, but now it's too late.
The scariest place to be as an entrepreneur is to be completely blindsided by
Yeah,
something you didn't see because you were the emperor with no clothes.
that's a great
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. So, nobody should be building a team around them that everybody feels like they have to say yes to you.
That's right. You don't
Then
want
you
yes
are the
people.
emperor with no clothes.
That's right. You want the ideas, you want the feedback, for sure. Like it or not, you want it.
Great. Well, Jennifer, this has been super fun. I
It
really
has.
enjoyed
Thank
having you
you.
on the show. It's
I
always fun
appreciate
to
it.
chat with you. And how can people connect with you if they're interested in connecting with you, or you know, how should people get in touch with you if you wanted them to do that?
My email address is just jennifer@parkavproperties.com, or you can just go to Park Avenue's website, parkavproperties.com, and all my info's on there. My cell number's on there, my email, and I'm not afraid to give my cell number out, so people are welcome to reach out to me, or you can go to NARPM, I'm on there too. So.
All right. Awesome. Jennifer,
Pretty
thanks so
easy.
much for coming on the show.
Thank
Really
you so much
appreciate
for
it.
having me. I enjoyed it. Thanks, Jason.
You bet. All right. So that was super fun hanging out with Jennifer. So for those of you listening, be sure, if you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you are listening on iTunes to make sure and subscribe to our iTunes and podcast, and make sure that you leave us some feedback. We really appreciate your real feedback on iTunes. It helps us get awareness and makes it worth it doing these shows. And be sure to join our free community, the DoorGrow Club Facebook group. You can get to that by going to doorgrowclub.com. And if it's been a little while since you've gotten some leads on your website, or you feel like your website maybe is pretty but isn't really doing its job, or maybe it's actually just ugly and not doing its job, make sure to go test it out by going to doorgrow.com/quiz and take our DoorGrow score quiz and test your website. It's going to show you how effective your website really is at converting and making money. And it'll give you a letter grade. So there's a few resources for you. And if you are struggling to grow your property management business and you feel like things aren't working, like SEO and pay-per-click and content marketing and social media marketing, and you're finding all of those cold lead marketing channels less effective, and your number one source of growth still is word of mouth, we can make that better. So reach out to DoorGrow, and you can check us out at doorgrow.com. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Until next time, to our mutual growth. Bye, everyone.